Yeah, and I've felt a lot of those things that you've talked about, just, because the way that I did business, my day to days, the hobbies that I have, basically were all shut down. And
Mm-hmm.
then so you start thinking like, well, geez, man, what's going on with all these weird, negative, anxious thoughts bubbling
Mm-hmm.
up in your head? And was I just getting myself too busy to, really take the time to like think about those things?
Sure.
So yeah, it's just like a great opportunity to take inventory on your life and then figure out, moving forward, like what you really want to put time into and what you should maybe be putting more time into, and simplifying instead of adding.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's just like being in real estate and stuff, and always like looking for the motivation to push harder in your work. That seems to be like the theme out there in the entrepreneurial world. It's like you got to get ahead, or somebody's going to be right there to take your spot.
Mm.
And it's like you look at your life and your lifestyle, and it's like, well, maybe I can do both, and maybe I readjust my expectations on what's really important,
Mm-hmm.
um, and what I put value in, and not put all my eggs in that work basket as much,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, no, and that word opportunity, like, I mean, there's countless stories out there, right? Of opportunities that have come before people and they've just missed, right? It's funny. I was thinking about like trying to bring up a specific story, but I don't even want to do that because it's just like, I think it sets a wrong precedent. But like, look, if we operate, I always liked this idea from Tony Robbins of trying to look at life like life happens for you instead of to you, right? That you're not this victim of circumstance, as
Mm,
opposed to like life knows what it's doing, and call that what you will, God, or life, I mean, like it's people phrase it differently. But things that are happening can happen, like it can be used for good, right?
yeah,
It's not necessarily that, look, I mean, yeah, this virus, we don't know exactly how it's spread, but the reality is that all of the horrible things that are happening are really happening. Like
right,
we obviously acknowledge that, we know that, and we hope for healing and recovery upon
definitely,
anyone that's struggling right now. We absolutely do, and obviously protect yourselves and do what, like, use the guidelines, right? But at the end of the day, like, as individuals, the only thing that we have control over in many situations is just how we're managing ourselves, because a lot of people are just losing jobs, right? i
yeah,
mean i mean one of the things that this is shining a light on is all the things you don't have control over in life, right? And like, I
yep,
mean, I'm talking not only jobs, but entire markets are potentially being kind of just swept away here, and and that's something, yeah, like all of that is just is extremely concerning and disruptive, right? and
for sure,
and I think this disruption and chaos that's happening, I mean, if anything, I've learned anything, is that that's generally what it takes in many times for someone to look at themselves and actually make true changes in their life if they're needed, right? Obviously there's external circumstances that we have to address, but as an internal and individual, right, it's oftentimes when chaos and disruption enters our life that we are most self-reflective, right?
yep,
And that's, at least, as a therapist, is what I rarely, if ever, have ever seen someone come in my office and, like, you know what, my life's great, I just thought I'd add therapy to the mix. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it doesn't happen, right? Because usually it's, my life is in such turmoil and chaos that I'm forcing change,
yeah. The
right?
wheels are
And
falling off.
yeah, and I can't help but, again, look at this entire situation, and yes, in the midst of turmoil and chaos, like, yeah, we're making changes as countries, as states, right? But especially as
Yes,
individuals, like, like, what what changes, right, needed to be made, right, that maybe wouldn't have been made if this hadn't happened, right? And that's what I mean when it comes as, like, this idea of viewing this as an opportunity. Yes, you can look at that at every level, right? It's an opportunity for us, because again, like, I think we were talking about this too. It's like, we were living in this unprecedented time where life was just easy.
Super
I,
easy.
I mean, life was easy, as easy as a few click. You didn't need to leave your house,
Right.
right? I mean, really. And it got to the point where it just got easier and easier. It wasn't even that, it's not even that fast food was enough anymore. It
Right.
was like, I want someone to go drive through the fast food line to go
Yeah.
get me my
Bring
stuff,
it to my
right?
door.
Yeah. It's like, and you think about that, you're like, well, like at what point is too much for this, right? Because the reality is that doesn't develop us as individuals.
Right.
Easy times don't develop us, right? And if we look at life as it's supposed to be happy and joyful, and that's the only thing we're supposed to achieve, yes, it's easy to see the situation as this catastrophe that's beyond measure. In fact, on a personal level, someone I know, their neighbor just had essentially killed himself, and also his wife,
Wow.
over just a city down from me. And it was, and the person I know is their neighbor, right? And their whole street is just completely shaken up by this. And the guy was just so much in turmoil over this idea of the economy collapsing. And he couldn't fathom how it would ever come together again. You know what I mean?
Wow. How old
And,
was he?
um, I know he's definitely middle aged, but again, I don't
Okay.
want to get, I mean, it's in the papers and stuff, but not that I read the papers, but I heard it was in there anyway. So, but the point I'm making is that it's like, yeah, these disruptions, they force us to look within, and they force us to make change. And again, I don't think we all, when life was going good, right? When life was super easy, we almost like we're creating our own problems in many ways, right? Like
Yeah.
our country, I mean, had never been more divided, I don't think, right? Maybe the Civil War, but before
Right.
that, it was just like the anger that was being put out, right? The, like, a lot of just the back and forth. It just seemed very chaotic, right? I mean, I don't know. What do you think about just that idea?
Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to like biologically how we're wired. It's like, and I forget where I heard it, but somebody had said something similar to what you just said. Hey, we don't really have any problems. We don't have those threats of those physical threats that we used to have
Mm-hmm.
from Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
Even the weather, we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about that. If it gets too cold, we click a button on an app on our phone and we
Right.
turn the heater on.
Yeah. You don't have to go
Um,
and get wood and then like
yeah,
heat up your house. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
exactly. So yeah, naturally our brain is just, because it's kept us alive for however many thousands of years because
Mm-hmm.
it's been able to detect, um, an outside force trying to hurt us.
Right.
So when there really is none, and I mean, most of the world, none, there's still countries where they're
Sure.
dealing with this sort of
Sure.
stuff.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
But then that's where the whole hashtag first world problems came to be, I guess, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
with our first world problems, those are all, a lot of it is created.
Like
Um,
self-generated problems.
yeah, self-generated. We
And
come up with stuff to worry about.
and stuff to be angry about, and all that. And again, it's, it's funny how a lot of that's just kind of washed away when we've encountered a real crisis. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And it's like, well, and it puts us to question, like, do we want to just go back into that? Do we want to go back into the division and the anger and all the stuff that was, just kind of really prevalent, at least in the media.
I
I
think it's
mean,
like a spoiled child syndrome a little bit is what we had a little bit.
yeah, I mean, well, well, because we were talking, and it's like, man, like, we had, the economy was in such a place where you could have thriving businesses in like specialty markets where it's like you were saying, like it's like specialty cupcakes, right? You could
Yeah,
have just a business around that, which is awesome, which is great. But I mean, like, that just shows you like how good things were, right? Where
right.
you could have a thriving business with something that,
Such a niche.
yeah, such a complete niche, and something that, necessary, like, you don't need cupcakes, right? They're a luxury,
Right.
right?
Well,
Or
some would argue.
Oh
No.
yeah, 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 yeah. I get it. Hey, don't get me wrong. I love me a cupcake, but then you go into like you said, like just stores for clothes for dogs, right? Or things
Yeah.
like that, where, I mean, yeah, yeah, I love the entrepreneurial, mindset in creating these businesses. It's awesome. But what we're finding right now, we have this real kind of economic pandemic happen, or I'm sorry, the disease pandemic, and then the economic
Yeah.
kind of
There's
secondary
going to be a
effects.
ripple effect.
Yeah. And just kind of what that's actually doing. And what I ultimately wanted to kind of tie this up with was just how, like, look, like I said, people don't look to work on themselves or to fix or to make change generally unless pain and turmoil is present, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and when I look at this as an opportunity, I mean, we talked about this idea of cultivating faith, hope, and love, right? Which again are some of the opposites of fear and anxiety, right? And a lot of what our people are consumed in right now. And like,
Yeah, no doubt.
how do we cultivate the opposite of that? Well, I think, you know, you have to have trying times to develop hope, right? Because you have to hope for something, right? It's
Hmm.
if things are too easy, hope is a non-issue, right?
Yeah.
Because things are easy.
Start taking it for granted.
Yeah, and hoping for the future is good, right? And having faith in things, right? Where you're like, having trust and faith and building that and building love and connection, right? It's